Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next in our TEA Talks, a next-gen web series. Today we'll be talking about personal branding and the elevator pitch. Just as a reminder for those who haven't joined us or are unfamiliar with the TEA, the Themed Entertainment Association is a nonprofit business association representing the creators of compelling experiences worldwide, from Walt Disney to Universal Parks and Resorts to independent artists and creators all over the world. Today we're going to be talking about personal branding in the elevator pitch, how you can put your best foot forward when networking with industry professionals. So why are we doing this now? Well, a week from Monday actually, we'll start the International Association for Amusement Parks and Attractions. This is the biggest industry event with over 27,000 attendees and 9 miles of exhibit aisles. There's 5 days of educational sessions and a whole lot of networking. We want to make sure that if you are attending, or even if you're attending another TEA event, that you are creating the best impression possible and have a good sense of what your personal brand is and what differentiates you from your colleagues. Speaking with us today will be 3 industry experts. First, we have Paul Osterhout with Universal Creative, executive producer of Universal Parks and Resorts. As executive producer for Universal Parks and Resorts, Paul works closely with Universal's project development and executive creative teams on project assessment for new resort development within Universal's international portfolio. Specifically, Paul is responsible for setting the creative vision and directing the blue sky conceptual development, design development, art direction, and is a key decision maker in land use planning, master planning, and attraction development for Universal's new international projects. Following will be Camille Jenkins, career coach at CJ Consulting. Camille Jenkins has 20 years of recruiting experience, resulting in more than 1,000 hires across the United States. She helps companies find the best talent to grow their bottom line. She has led classes for hiring managers to enable them to hire right, save time, and avoid lawsuits. She also coaches individuals and has led classes for people seeking new careers. Additionally, she has a strong technology sales background. She is passionate about talent and excellence. And following will be Kile, Ozier, Creative Director for Ozier Creative. Kile Ozier has a solid reputation across a spectrum of industries, wielding effective, compelling storytelling as the key component of spectacle and experience. His ability to create intensely personal experience through ceremony is unexcelled in the industry. A visionary and nimble producer and director, he has also developed unique methodologies for creating experiences such that audiences are captivated and rapt, brought to their feet with thunderous applause, or deeply touched by his work. A side note, Paul is on the TEA Eastern board member, and Kyle was the former TEA Next Gen Committee chair. So with that said, I think we'll start the program and take it away, Paul.
Okay, ni hao, everybody. I am speaking with you today from Beijing, China, where, if you've been following the news lately, we've just announced that we're going to be creating a new park here in Beijing. As I was listening to Clara's introduction, I probably should have retitled this the 30-second TEA booth pitch, because that's where a lot of you hopefully will be hanging out in a couple of weeks. That is where all of the industry's designers and people that are really decision makers will be passing through that booth at some point during IAPA week. So what is a 30-second elevator pitch? And by the way, I have actually given a 30-second elevator pitch in an elevator. So we get that question out of the way really quickly. It's essentially, it describes who you are and what you do. That's basically all it is. But it could describe your services or products if you sell a product or if you provide a specialized service. It also can introduce your company to those that you want to get introduced to. It's a useful tool for communicating that core information quickly. And the goal here, always the goal, is to get the next meeting with an elevator pitch. You're not going to get anything substantial decided, or you're not going to get anything really information across, but what you want to do is you want to get that second meeting. You want to hopefully get a follow-up meeting. That's the goal. So what you want to do is, when you begin putting your elevator pitch together, you have to nail down the best way to describe your field and the type of job you're pursuing. Until you can clearly explain the type of position you want, nobody can help you get it. No one can hire you to do it. So write down everything you'd want a prospective employer to know about you and about your skills. Don't think about time here. Just write everything down, because we're gonna edit down in a second. But get everything down. Think about what you want to do, what kind of job you're looking for. And remember, the good pitch should answer 3 questions: who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for. So as soon as you write all those goals down, now we're going to edit. Grab a big red pen, and you got to mercilessly delete everything that's not critical to your pitch. Keep editing until you get that speech down to a few key bullet points or sentences. Again, you want to be at around 30 seconds. So if you have a word count on your computer, that's about 75 words or so. That's a good rule of thumb, is about 75 words. Also, remember, you want to eliminate industry jargon. You may say you're a BIM manager expert, but the person you're talking to may not know what that means. You may be talking to an HR representative. You may be talking to a recruiter. They might not know industry jargon. So try and minimize as much industry jargon in this first pitch. Okay. The last thing you want to do is have the listener feel stupid or uninformed. Okay. So again, edit, get it down to about 30 seconds. And now what we're going to do is we're going to tune it into station WIFM. Station WIFM is what's in it for me. Remember, the person you're talking to wants to know what's in it for them. How are you going to help them? So if you start to use benefit-focused terminology, it starts to help convince them that you can offer a service to them, and you need to be working with them. Here's a good example. I'll try and do a quick example of WIFM. Hi, I'm Paul Osterhout. I'm an executive show producer with 30 years experience working for theme park companies, and I'd like to talk to you about employment opportunities. Okay, not bad. But if you're a listener, you've got to say, well, how is that going to help me? So what you want to do is, here's a little example with some WIFM in there. Hi, I'm Paul Osterhout. I'm an executive producer with 30 years experience designing and delivering world-class attractions in the theme park industry. And I'd like to speak with you about how I can assist you with your just announced international projects. So again, I want to flip it around a little bit, and I want to start throwing in some things about how I'm going to help you. I'm coming here to solve your problems. Now that short introduction should take about 15 seconds or so. That's just like who I am and what I do. I want to leave the last 15 seconds for a little bit more details that perhaps are unique to my skill set, or on specific ways how I could help a potential employer. So the 2 essentials of the first 15 seconds are who and what. And then take the last 15 seconds, and then you want to start to add a few more details about what you do. All right. The biggest problem that I hear from elevator pitches all the time is they sound like they're being read. We don't write and speak the same way. So if you're not careful, the elevator pitch can come off sounding more like an infomercial than a conversation. It wants to be conversational. So write it down and then start to practice. If you have a recording feature on your computer, read it into your computer. Practice. Say it, and practice in front of your friends. And then when you're done with that, ask your friends, what were the key moments that you could take out of this 30 seconds? And if they don't jive with what your key message is, then you've got to change your pitch. Okay. So again, make it conversational. Make it as warm as you can. You don't want to sound like an infomercial. And as I mentioned, you've got to keep tweaking your pitch until it no longer sounds rehearsed either. When your presentation is polished to your satisfaction, try it on some friends, ask them what they thought the key points were, and if their responses don't square with your objective, then you still need a little bit of work. It's going to feel awkward at first, especially if you're not used to speaking in front of people. And a lot of artists and designers are not used to speaking in front of people. That's not how we think. So it's going to be a little awkward. It's going to be a little hard, but it does get easier the more you practice. And when you know what you're going to say, you can start to relax. delivery will start to smooth out. Okay, sometimes you may have 15 seconds to do your pitch. Sometimes you may have 2 or 3 minutes. So you got to mix it up, prepare some variations. The way to do that is go back to your key messages, your 5 or 6 key points, and you want to make sure that you've always got those included. But now if you have a little bit extra time, maybe add a little bit more of your skill sets that are unique to you and why you're the perfect candidate for the job. Okay, here's where you got to really pull it together, because the best elevator pitch in the world falls flat if you can't deliver it. If you stumble, if you're nervous, if your voice starts to shake, you got to just relax and you got to get through that. And the more you practice, the better it will come across. You really want to sound like you're a confident person, and then if I hired you, you can do the job. All right? So look the person in the eye, smile, and then deliver your message with confidence. Keep it upbeat. But remember, you always have to relax. And then you have to be willing to throw it out. Don't get so focused that you neglect the primary reason why people want to do business with you. It's because they connect with you. They don't connect with your pitch. They want to connect with you. So if you're already creating that connection with somebody, you're already talking, then don't go into infomercial mode. Just keep it conversational and kind of work in who you are and what you're doing, and let them know, hey, you're available. You have an issue. You have a project I'd be perfect for. Don't risk throwing your pitch in if you've already made a connection with somebody. Okay, just say what you do, and more importantly, find out a little bit about them. Start to create that personal connection. Remember, the goal here always is to score that follow-up interview. So if your personal connection will get you there, then you've got to play that card. All right. All right. An elevator pitch of a different kind. These are called different things. The Gib Gab is one I participated in about 3 or 4 months ago. And it's basically speed dating for interviewing. And you get about 3 minutes to do an interview, and you move from table to table. Different companies are all there doing interviews. It's the same goal. You want to get the next meeting. You're not going to get hired after a 3-minute interview. But what you will get is you will get that callback interview, and that's really what you want to do. So a couple of tips on these Gib Gab or these speed dating kind of things. Try and gather as much intelligence as you can. Try and figure out who's going to be doing the interviewing, how long you're going to have to present yourself. Sometimes it's 3 minutes, sometimes it's a little longer. Try and figure out how the room is going to be set up. Are these going to be tables all next to each other? Is it going to be in a restaurant? Is it going to be in an office somewhere? It's also helpful to know who you're going to be presenting with. Is it classmates that you're working with and you're all coming down as a class to interview? Is it an open call that's just an open hiring session? It's good to know, because if you're interviewing with a bunch of your classmates, trust me, you've all done the same senior project, and I'm going to see the same senior project 30 times. All right, so make sure that if you're going to show me that senior project or you're going to show me something, yours has to be better than the other 30 that I just saw. All right. Going back to the top comment, remember that HR recruiters and hiring managers are going to be looking for different things than perhaps people you would actually be working with. They may be more focused on soft skills. How are you? What's your personality like? Do you get along with people? How do you handle stress? Whereas a colleague or somebody you'll be working directly with, they may be looking more at your hard skills. Can you draft? Can you draw? Can you design? Can you write? All of those things. So it'll be good to know who you'll be interviewing with. And a lot of times it's going to be a group interview. The last Gib Gab I was at, we had some HR recruiters there with some of the creative designer folks. So you get the best of both worlds that way. And then how long you have to present. If you have 3 minutes and you take the first 2 or 3 minutes turning on your iPad to bring up your resume, you just blew 2 minutes, okay? So be prepared, get yourself ready, make sure you look good, and then again, nail it with confidence. Be prepared for the unexpected, okay? If you show me your portfolio, and let's say you've designed some kind of cool attraction, I'm going to ask you questions about it. And I expect that if you designed it, I want you to tell me, I want you to be able to answer those questions. If I ask you, well, this is pretty cool. How many guests does it carry per hour? If you look at me and say, oh, I don't know, but isn't this really cool? I'm going to say, no, it's not really cool. You need to know the business. You need to be professional here because this is your first chance to make an impression with us. So make sure that if you show me something, you can stand by it and you can answer questions about it. Make sure that your portfolio is updated. Make sure that your contact information is all correct. Make sure that you know what the group is looking for. If you're going into an interview that looking for restaurant designers, alter your portfolio, alter your presentation to kind of focus on that. Or if they're looking for a theme park design, then change your portfolio to match that. You should have way more than one portfolio and way more than one presentation, depending on who you're meeting. And again, make sure you differentiate yourself. It's not really a one-on-one interview. You're competing with dozens. So how do you stand out? Think about the people that you're interviewing next to. How do you look different? Again, why is your version the best? If you're all going to show me the class project, why is yours the best? All right, stand and deliver. This is the part where you actually in the interview process, the 3 minutes. Look professional, okay? Don't pull out a wrinkled resume from your backpack. You got to look professional. Is your portfolio easily accessible? I've already brought this up. Is your iPad covered with fingerprints? It is, trust me. This also goes back to when you check out the room, make sure that you go there and look where the lighting is. Because I would say that 75% of the portfolios I see on iPads, there's a light directly overhead, and I really can't see your portfolio. So go in there, scout out the rooms, scout out the situation, and then adjust to that. And then think about what you're going to leave behind. You should be leaving something behind, whether it's a resume, a portfolio, something a little nicer in a binder. It's totally up to you. It's your personality, but you should leave something behind because I will just have looked at 30 people and I made notes, but if you leave me your portfolio, it really helps me remember who you are. And don't be afraid to ask for a follow-up during that 3 minutes. Just say, I'd like to follow up. I have a lot more of my portfolio I'd like to show you. In 3 minutes, I didn't get a chance to really describe my skill sets to you. Can we set up a time to meet again? Don't be afraid to ask for that. If the interviewer can't do it, they'll say no, but take a shot at it. You never know. Also, be sure to thank the host. A lot of times these Gib-Gab events are being put on by volunteers or people in the industry who just want to help. So be sure to thank them and also, of course, thank the interviewers. And one more thing here, hang out at the end. Get to know us socially. A lot of times these are in restaurants or something, and the interviewers will hang out afterwards, maybe grab a beer or something. Just feel free to stay behind and to network that way, and to, again, be trying to make a social connection, a personal connection with the interviewers. It really does help. Because, again, we're hiring you, not your pitch, okay? All right, that's it. You've got a couple of weeks before IAPA, so go out there and prepare, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you in a couple of weeks.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. And next up, we have Camille. So Camille is going to tell us about the elevator pitch as well, and she's got some great advice. I know she's going to bring home a few of Paul's points, but she's got a couple of great points that you guys need to really hear. So take a listen to Camille Jenkins.
Hi there. What I think is really interesting looking at Paul's slides and listening to him talk is we come from a very different background. Creative being not me, you can tell from my rather boring slides versus Paul's. But what's going to be really interesting is the things that I'm going to duplicate that he said. We didn't talk ahead of time, so Why that's important to you is if we're both hitting the same point, that means it's something to really take home and think about, okay? And obviously I could talk a long time about interviews, and I am going to add a couple of things at the end because I didn't really know I was supposed to speak to that. I was strictly just trying to speak to this elevator pitch point. So let me start with that, and then I'll wrap up with a couple of interesting stories that I've experienced from interviewing literally thousands of people. Anyway, the first step in creating an elevator pitch to me is you really have to know yourself. Again, reiterating some of the things that Paul said. But I have to tell you, after interviewing thousands of people, I am amazed how few people can succinctly articulate who they are, what they want to do, and most importantly, what they have to offer. I mean, what's your passion? What's your dream? What's your goal? And once you know those things, can you express it in 30 seconds? Yes, 30 seconds. And I know that seems like a short time, but watch a clock sometime and talk. 30 seconds can be a really long time. The next thing you have to do is you need to research the company. I'm also continuously amazed at how little people know about the company where they think they want to work. When I led national hiring for a consulting company, I used to regularly ask people, we would sit down in an interview, and the first thing I would say to them, literally the first thing I would say, gee, thanks so much for coming in. Have you had a chance to look at our website? And about 80% of the time, I would hear things like, you know, I really wanted to, but I was busy and time got away from me. And, you know, I would think to myself right then, if this shows how little interest they are demonstrating now, what can I expect after they're hired? Today, with the internet and social networking, there are so many ways to research a company. There's no excuse for not doing it. You know, what does the company need? What are blogs or headlines saying about the company? What are competitors saying? Looking at those needs, what needs can you fulfill? The quickest way to gain interest of a potential employer is to be able to articulate the positive impact that you can have on their needs. You can't tell them what you can do for them if you don't know what you can do for them. Okay, now you know those things, and it's time for the pitch. You have to be ready. You can't wing it. Budweiser certainly does not wing their 30-second commercial for the Super Bowl. In fact, they spend months preparing, practicing, and fine-tuning it to the cost of $3 to $4 million. And you have to do the same. No, obviously, you don't spend $3 to $4 million. But you do have to do the preparing and the practicing, the kinds of specifics that Paul was going over. You have to write it. You actually have to write it down. And most people don't want to do that. They don't want to take the time. They go, I know this, I can just do it. But you can't. You have to write it down. And you have to practice it over and over and over. And you don't just practice it in your head. You practice it out loud. I tell people to practice in front of a mirror. Look at yourself. Look at your face. But talk to that mirror over and over. You have to do it so often that it becomes natural and instinctual. So you're just having a conversation. It has to flow. Practice it with your friends. You do want to thank the person for their time. And you want to ask how you can follow up. You ask, how can you follow up? People aren't used to being asked. Usually people say, oh, I'll follow up with you or what. But say, thank you. It's really been nice talking to you a few minutes. What is the best way I could follow up with you? You know, you actually asking them permission and asking them how you can follow up. It's showing a consideration to them. But you know what happens if you're talking to them and you're not a match? Don't pretend that you have the skill set that they need if you don't have it. Some of the worst things I've seen candidates do is to present work with errors or work they claim they created. And you know what? They did do some of that work, but when I put them in a position to do similar work, they were unable to do so. Or maybe it was follow-up communication. Perhaps it was an email from them to me. And it was clear that the work, the resume or the portfolio they had given me when they first met me, that was written by someone else because their follow-up communication was not consistent in the skills that they had demonstrated initially. Those kind of things would make me question everything they told me. Everything is out. All trust is lost. So don't pretend you have the skill set that they need if you don't have it. Don't monopolize or waste their time. But what you can do is seize the time as a good networking opportunity. And networking is every person you meet, whether it's in an elevator, a store, a bar, a party, a football game, wherever. And I recently read The Key to Good Networking, and it was very different than anything I'd ever thought about before. But I recently read The Key to Good Networking is to think about what you can do for others, not what they can do for you. And many of you are thinking, Camille, that's crazy. What could I do for them? What could I do for Paul, for example? I mean, I'm just out of school. I'm just starting. But you know what? You may have someone in one of your classes that has the exact skill, and you know that their strength in that area exceeds yours. And if you introduce that person to this person that you just met, you've offered to connect them with someone that could help them. Wow. You are suddenly their hero. And when they have a need that you might could meet for them, don't be surprised if they might reach out to you. Again, as Paul said, ask if they could refer you to someone that you could add value to their team. You know, what's a referral they could make for you? These steps sound really simple, and they're very basic, but they are the keys to the beginning. And if you don't get your introduction right, there will be no middle or no ending. And the 2 points that I wanted to add that Paul touched on about actually being in an interview is if you go to a business and you go in and you sign in and you tell them you're there for an interview and you're waiting in that reception area, I want to remind you that the interview has actually already started. Because I can't tell you how many times I would go out to the receptionist after the candidate had left. And I would say, hey, what was that person like out here? Because you know what? I was the person they had to impress. So they were going to be very, very nice to me. But sometimes the receptionist would be able to tell me how they had conducted themselves in that front room. And I decided they weren't going to be a good cultural fit for our company, regardless of their skills. So you just need to remember that you're on it all the time. And then dressing for interviews. A few years ago, my husband's son was going for an interview, and I told him how he needed to dress. And he said to me, you know, Camille, they don't dress like that there. They're much more relaxed, much more casual. And I said, well, you know what? When you get the job there, then you can dress that way. And so anyway, he dressed the way I told him he should dress. And he was interviewed by 3 men. And they actually commented to him on how nice he looked. And he said, he told me about it later because they said, gee, you look really nice. You wouldn't believe it. This morning we interviewed this guy and he looked like he slept in the clothes he came to interview in. So this young man was young, and he didn't think his appearance and dress was that important, but it actually was, and he got the job. So that's kind of closing out for me until we get to questions.
Thank you, Camille. I want to remind you that we are taking questions during the session. So if you would like to ask a question of any one of our fabulous presenters, and please do take advantage of this opportunity, please go ahead and just send those questions into the questions app, and we will get them asked and hopefully answered. And one thing that's very interesting is all three of our folks on our presentations today could be the people who will be interviewing you for the job that you'll have tomorrow. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Paul could be interviewing you for the opportunities he's got going on internationally. Camille could be interviewing you for a number of different things. Kyle's got projects he's working all around the world, and I think one of the most interesting things is right now your three presenters are talking to you from three different parts of the world. We've got Paul said he's in China this morning. It's very, very morning for him. It's 1:42 a.m. over there at the moment. Camille's presenting from California, Southern California, I believe. And
It's 2:42, by the way.
2:42. Oh, that's right, because they don't do daylight savings time.
That's right.
See, all these things that you have to learn about culture when you want to work in this industry, very important to keep in mind. And then Kile is actually presenting to us this morning from, well, Kile, where are you?
I'm in Dubai.
See, so it's a very international community. So, Kile, with that.
So this is really interesting because, as Camille said, none of the three of us have spoken to each other coming into this, and we're all saying some of the very same things. And before I jump into mine, I want to follow up on something Camille said about time. An example I was going to use, which I'll just use now, is that when I tell people that they have 30 seconds and they complain about it, I go, well, hold your breath for 30 seconds and tell me how that feels. And the other thing, too, about dressing, that's part of the conversation. I can skip then, but it is important to look good at your first impression. Even for me, with whenever I see a new client, I may not go all the way to suit and tie anymore, but I make sure I look really presentable and corporate the first time so that when I show up as a creative later, they know I clean up okay. I just think it's very important not to overestimate the power of the skill and talent you bring to the table over the first impression you make. So that's my follow-up. So going into this presentation, the questions that I looked at first, how do I find work in this industry? How to make a good impression? How can I build my personal brand? We're all talking about this already. Elevator pitch. Well, I'll come back to that. My point in all of this is be authentic. Everything that Paul and Camille have said to you, the subtext that I see in it is whatever you say, however you want to represent yourself, needs to be the truth, the valid you, what is authentically you. And if that's the basis of whether you write it and memorize it, whether you have practiced it off the cuff extemporaneously again and again, if you're telling really how you feel, you're going to do fine. The term elevator pitch actually comes from the scenario of an accidental meeting with someone important in an elevator. So the idea is that the elevator pitch has to be ready at any time, whether you're at a networking event or you just happen to walk into Steven Spielberg in an elevator or whatever. So that's how I approach elevator pitch. Let's see what I have here next. Oh yes, the positioning versus preparation. The title that I see is Positioning Yourself to Become a Themed Entertainment Pro. So there are two words here that I want to take a look at. Positioning to me indicates interpreting. Preparation is what I want to talk about, which is if you're authentic, if you're ready for it, if you've thought about what you want to be, what you want to do, what part in whatever company you're approaching you want to play, then you are preparing yourself to present yourself as a themed entertainment pro. And the word pro can be looked at in two ways. There's a golf pro, the top of the game, but I'm looking at pro as professional, because the only way to become a pro is to be professional and continue to do the work the best you possibly can until you're setting standards. So nobody starts as a pro. you have to start as a professional. That's my position, of course. There, see, I'm already ahead of myself. Great. We'll race through here because I know we want to get to questions. So I've talked about what an elevator pitch is. So the way it's done, there probably is a step-by-step somewhere. You can take a look at, obviously, first you want to write down what it is that's most important to you. But really, this is a joke. Every elevator pitch, every personal brand has got to come organically out of who you are. So rather than involve yourself in a process too deeply, the main thing is to be clear on what you bring to the table, where your passions are, what you want to do, and how you might fit into this or that company. Sorry, there we go. So the tools at your disposal today that are, number one, social media. With social media, when I say etiquette, the thing to remember is introduce yourself. If you just click on LinkedIn and use the default greeting that says, I want to link in with you, chances are you're not going to make much of an impression. When I have people approach me or when I approach other people, I've actually met them, or I've read what they've written, or I've been to a speech. And the other way, when I get my suggestion to you is know something about the person, make a comment on something they have written, establish a relationship with them professionally before you ever actually reach out to them to connect, so that there's some reason that you want to connect with them. And when you do send a LinkedIn or a Facebook or any kind of an outreach to link with somebody to introduce yourself by social media, make sure you know who it is they are and tell them why. Send a note with it. Just the blank, using the blank default doesn't indicate any level of personality or background. And I do want to underscore Camille's point about doing your research before you come into a room. I Google everybody I meet, whether I'm looking for a new client or looking to hire a new producer. Upwards or downwards, I always know who I'm sitting across the table from. I think I see actually younger people doing this more often, but it's surprising who misses this. Your communication, as I said, should be personalized. Assume nothing. Don't assume they remember you from a class. Your own portfolio is your body of work. When you're looking at what you want to present to people, collect, as Paul said, collect everything that you want to share and then start editing it down. And as I say, edit and vet the living hell out of it. Share it with your friends. You know, I don't know if my mother ever understood what I did or do, but she's gone now, so it's too late to communicate it to her. But I actually have boiled my pitch down to one image, which I keep on my phone. I keep one of the screens blank, so that if I happen to run into somebody, I can actually just flip to that screen and show them that and say, this is an example of what I do, and I introduce it with a phrase, one of several phrases, depending on what's appropriate, about how I communicate with audiences. I might say, I'm good at making large groups of people weep and write checks if I'm talking to a development executive from a university. I might say, I'm able to bring an entire stadium to absolute silence and then a sudden cheer to somebody who is looking for a producer for a large-scale spectacle. I mean, boil it down to the one thing, because again, this is what you want, as Paul said, is the second meeting. So you want to communicate what sets you apart from the pack. So you are your personal brand. I don't believe in the term, personally I don't like the term reinventing. To me that sounds false. Maybe you redefine it, maybe you refine it, maybe you evolve who you are. I would hope that from year to year, from gig to gig, from career to career, you do evolve. And so you are your personal brand. In this industry, my sense is nurture the wonder that you're born with. Keep it. Pursue what's interesting to you. If you go down a path and it's not what you want to do, then stop doing it. It's okay to change your mind. These choices are not life choices. They're momentary. You can change your mind again and again, as many times as it takes, and you can come back to careers or areas of this industry that resonate with you later. And once you've had experience in other areas, nothing is forever. Nothing. Not even Disney. Thank you, Camille. So again, in this industry especially, I just need to wave this flag. Don't do this for the money. The money will come or it won't. You have to be doing this because you love it. You have to love the work or you should get out of it, because really the bottom line in this job, in these jobs, is what goes on in the heads of the little kids out in those parks, or the adolescents, or us, the adults. But it's about fantasy and wonder, suspension of disbelief. So the more you can nurture that in yourself, the more authenticity you can give that, the better. There's really no trick to this. There's no trick to this. Obviously, some people meet the right person at the right time, and it all works beautifully, and it becomes legend. But the bottom line is you have to be authentic, follow up, and Camille's suggestion is good. If you say, how can I follow up with you, that is essentially an open probe, as we say in sales, and they've given you permission to follow up and said how to do it. So when you do it, they're expecting it. But again, don't pester. The thing to remember, especially if you're in freelance or outside the corporate environment, is that time flows very differently for people in a corporation. Somebody else handles their calendar, their checks are deposited automatically. A week is a whole different thing. And they might say to you, I'll call you next week, and it could be a month. They have no idea of that. So don't assume you're not going to hear from them. Maybe fire a shot across their bow to let them know you're still out there, but be way more patient than you're comfortable being. And don't believe your own press. I know your mom thinks you're amazing, and all your classmates are like, God, you're the best in the world. You may be the best in the world, but that's not how you want to walk in the room. You want to walk in the room with, as both my panelist colleagues have said, how can you bring value to them? Because they're the gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers. So the main thing, my point through all of this, is embrace your passion, express your passion. And talk about it. Talk about this to all your friends. That's your practice. So that you can, I'm trying to switch to the next slide here. There we go. So that you can pull it out of your pocket at any time. Be authentic. Tell the truth. We are represented by everything we do or say. That this is where I was going to talk to you about how you dress. And as I think it was, I can't remember which of the panelists talked about, if the job isn't for you, if you being authentic puts you out of the running, then you've dodged a bullet and you've saved people time. And I like the suggestion of suggesting someone else who might be better suited to the project, because they will remember you, and you can bet you'll hear from them at the right time when you're the right guy or gal. That's it. Allow your passion to show. Be authentic. Let's get to some questions here. Let me sign out.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle.
Good luck.
Yeah. There we go. Ending on fireworks, just the way every good day does.
I don't want to lose the fireworks.
Excellent. Well, we do have a number of great questions coming in, and thank you all for that. Please go ahead, and if you have a question for our group, go ahead and submit them now. We're going to go ahead and get started. I have one general question I want to ask, because this was, as everyone was talking, kind of came to mind for me. What's the most unusual comment or action you've ever seen in a pitch or interview that just made you go either wow or oh, let's not do that? So I don't know who wants to go first, but just your one moment that made you go either great or never again, please.
I had a pitch just a couple of weeks ago, and it became apparent that the person really wasn't committed to working in this industry. We were talking about this is what she tells me this is what I do, and then I am also doing real estate. And I said, oh, great. So, what's your passion? She goes, well, I want to be a real estate agent. And I'm more like, well, why are you talking to me? And it was one of those weird things. It's like, I guess she thought she could just have a part-time job while she went and got her real estate license. And so I think a little bit about what Kyle said is be committed, and if you want to get in this industry, then throw your whole self into it. It's not a part-time thing. You really have to have a passion for it, because it is a difficult thing.
Camille, Kyle, do you have any?
Well, I have one comes to mind is I remember when I was at a company that I will not name, but I got a script from a guy who'd written a script, and it was full of typos and misspellings, and I'm a grammar curmudgeon, so I just went through and kind of redlined it, and I sent it back to him. I said, you really ought to, before you submit something like this, make sure it's in better shape than that. And he was like, why? Nobody's going to see it. It's just for people to speak. I'm like, detail, pal. I mean, obviously he didn't get any further than that, but every detail matters, no matter whether you're presenting something that's written, that's going to be read. It should be spelled right. The grammar should be good. The punctuation should be good. It just shows attention to detail. That's just the thing that came to mind.
Camille, any fun stories of moments that just made you go, wow, or oh dear?
Well, I think the old dear was the ones where people tell me they can do something, and then when I would put them in the position to do it, that they really couldn't. And the wow were the ones that come in that were able to know something specific about our business and be able to actually present something to me that we could actually think about using, because that requires a lot of work.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's go to some of the questions that you've been asking. Kyle, we have a question for you from Damaris. They graduated from Whittier College back in May. Regarding the portfolio, what if you don't have a portfolio, meaning you're not an artist or you're not a creative, which is, of course, one of my pet peeves is everyone saying that they're not creative. There's a difference between being creative and being a creative, but we'll get into that later. So what if you don't have a portfolio? What else can you leave behind?
Well, frankly, your business card means a lot. I know there's a conversation back and forth about digital business cards and this and that, but something about a good business card. My business card has my logo on one side, and the other side, I see a question here with the guy has all these slashes in his title. We'll get to that. Because for me, sometimes I'm the producer, sometimes I'm the creative director, sometimes I'm the director, sometimes I'm the creative producer. So my business card, and since I work all over the world, says Kile Ozier, itinerant creative guy. I finally gave up on trying to define one thing I was. So what happens is it becomes a conversation piece. So, and the thing about business cards is people keep them in a box, in a briefcase, in their desk. And on down the line, if you handed them their business card and they noticed it, and either you say, I signed that, or this is me, in some way it represents who you are, then they're going to go, oh, who was that girl I talked to that had that card? And they'll flip through and they'll pull out the card, and you get called. So I don't have a portfolio of art that I've created. I have photographs of shows I've done, but my leave behind is my card. That's it. And my website. So it doesn't have to be anything grand. The main thing is that it's accessible and memorable.
Excellent. Okay. Paul, got a question for you from Jonathan. He asks, starting out in the industry with very little professional experience in themed entertainment, he's feeling a bit intimidated by what he can offer compared to people with more experience. He's looking to be a production coordinator. He now has experience in other things, production coordinator for television commercials. How does he parlay that into a career in doing what we do?
Well, he's got a great start. I mean, the production coordinator is really an entry position into the industry, and it's one of those positions that is terrific because you get to learn a lot about all the different disciplines it takes. He's already doing it in television. Then I would say then you've got a great start. Think about what you do that could translate into team environment. You are highly organized. You work with difficult personalities, creative people. You understand the difference between front of stage and backstage. You understand a lot of the terminology that we use, lighting and audio, and et cetera, et cetera. So you start to think about all of those things that can apply to themed entertainment, and I think you've got a great start. I would just keep thinking about how to sell your coordination skills, and don't get hung up that you haven't done an attraction. You've done the job in a different way.
Excellent. Okay. Camille, I've got a question for you from Jonathan. How does one make themselves a stronger candidate with little experience in the themed entertainment industry? So, similar question. How do you take someone who may not be the strongest candidate on paper and make them appear like they're the right candidate?
You know, it's always tough. That's the same thing when someone is changing total careers, and you have to be able to go back in your resume and has to reflect what are the core underlying skills that are transferable from what you're doing now, to be able to put it in the language that that person is speaking. It's kind of along the same line as when, I know there's a question about resumes falling into black holes. How do you get someone to look at them? Well, if you're applying for a job like the person who's not in the industry as much, you've got to be able to figure out how to use the same keywords that are being sought after. Because if this is going to a computer and they're looking at it first, or if they're going to a human being and they're looking at it first, you've got to be able to transfer experiences that you've had and to be able to use the same language that's understandable, and it's referred to as transferable skills. You might even be able to Google that phrase, transferable skills, to help you see tangibly how to do that.
Well, as someone who's just gone through that recently myself, coming into this industry, I can tell you that advice is dead on. That is exactly how it worked for me to be able to make a transition from education to this world. So take that advice to heart, folks. She means it, every bit of it. Paul, a quick question on IAPA. The hardest thing for a lot of folks is the opener, according to Jeff. How do you go into that without feeling awkward and being pushy? How do you make the approach and not feel like that guy?
Well, I mean, I wish I had the right answer. It's going to be awkward if you don't have experience going up and just introducing yourself. It's going to be awkward, but you just got to get through it. Go to the TEA mixer. I think it's the first night. I should know this. At Monday night. Clara, is it Monday night? Go to that. Go to that mixer and just look around, assess the room, figure out which cliques are kind of closed off, and look and see who's open, and then just go introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm so, and I just graduated from blah blah blah, and this is what I do. Keep it conversational. Don't start off by talking to the very first person and kind of hitting them for a job. Just try and meet people. Just introduce yourself as you would in any kind of party or private function or something, and just I think you'll find that we are a lot less intimidating than you think that we are. So just come up and say hi, and then hit up, especially the TEA mixer. People will have name tags on that'll identify themselves as board members. Come out and talk to us and say, hey, this is who I am. I just graduated from this school. Is there anybody I should talk to while I'm here? And we would be happy to say, yeah, see that guy over there? He could use a drink. So, go talk to him or whatever. And it's really, that's the best way to do it. And then you'll have made a connection, and I guarantee you'll see most of those people going through the TEA booth at some point or another in the show or as you walk the floor, you'll start to recognize faces again. And just give a friendly hi or just a hello. And you never know when that's going to make that person stop and say, hey, what did we talk about the other night? And then you jump into oh, I'm this and this is what I do, and I'm just getting into the industry. So it's just, you kind of have to work your way into it that way. But don't be intimidated. We really are a bunch of friendly people. And the other thing is, we're looking for help. We are looking for talented people. So, don't forget that. If you were coming out of school 5 or 6 years ago, I might tell you to look for another job. But I think now it's a good time to be getting into this industry, especially if you're just coming out of school and if you got talent. And don't get frustrated if you wanted to work for, you always wanted to be an Imagineer and they're not hiring, okay? Because it's tough to get into the big companies, but there's a ton of little companies that are doing incredible work. And so don't think of that as being a second-tier job, because it's not. Those companies are doing incredible stuff, and smaller companies can be a lot more fun because you get to try a lot of different things. Because they're small companies, you have to be polyvalent. You have to, you're going to be a producer one day and a writer the next day and a designer the next day, and that's really the fun part of this job.
Well, and if I can jump in, Paul, it's not unusual for the smaller companies to end up doing work for the larger companies. You never know where something's going to lead. And also, to Paul's point, there is not, in my experience, a more welcoming audience than the TEA, especially now, especially to young people. If you walk into that room and go, hi, I'm with Next Gen, and this is my first time here, and chances are whoever you say that to is going to go, oh, you need to meet so-and-so, and they'll take you over there. And you just, as Paul said, they may look intimidating, but almost all the people in that room have been through exactly the same thing as you and are looking for people and want to show you around. So just know that you're very, very welcome at that reception.
Being involved in lots of other industries, I cannot reiterate how blessed y'all are more, because Paul and Kile are absolutely right on, because I've never seen a group of experienced people welcome young, inexperienced people the way those leaders do. Y'all are very fortunate.
One thing I would just add to that is, at things like IAPA's a long week, and we're going to be there all week. So if you don't get a chance to talk to us at one event, don't think you're not going to be able to talk to us throughout the week. What I would advise, because I've seen it before, is I would advise against the swarm. This happened a lot at SAIT, where we saw one person immediately after a presentation or at an event get kind of bombarded by a group of people. And it's usually more effective to have a one-on-one or two-on-one conversation than trying to participate in a 6 or 7 person swarm, because then you can create more of those connections and have more of a conversation and probably not feel as intimidated by the people around you.
Such a good point. And to Paul's point about standing out from the crowd, if you see somebody mobbed, just memorize their face and catch them later. Just don't take part in that at all. You'll stand out if you're not part of that mob. Good point, Clara.
Yeah, and one last thing. You should be doing your intel now about who you want to meet, who's going to be there, what companies that you want to get introduced to, and you ought to start figuring out who those decision makers are. So when you're walking the hallways or you're standing in the TEA booth, you do the little glance down at people's name tag badges, and you go like, oh, that's right, that's the guy from Garner Holt or wherever. And then that kind of, you go up to them and say, oh, I've been reading about your company, and I heard about your company, and then you go into your introduction of who you are. And just one last thing, don't forget that when we're in the show, in the convention hall, we're working. I could be running from meetings, I could be going from whatever to whatever. So for me, it's always better outside in the lobby or in the mixers. But again, if I'm just standing around the TEA booth, please come up and say hi and introduce yourself.
As you can all tell, we're running a little bit long. We do have a couple more questions, so we'll understand if any of you have to drop off, but we're going to take a couple more questions. Our presenters are very kindly staying a little bit long with us, so I appreciate that, particularly for those who are in a much later time zone. So thank you both. So Kyle, this one plays to something you mentioned earlier. This is a young creative who has too many slashes in his bio. Actor, director, designer, writer, stage manager, producer, working actively in all those fields, and wants to know, how do you narrow that down to an elevator pitch? How do you turn that into something that can be memorable?
Well, just off the cuff, what are the skills that translate into every single one of the things that you do? What's the best? What are your assets? Rather than a label, I would use what you're good at. Like, I am good at connecting story to an audience at a deeper emotional level and taking a story that an audience may be familiar with and revivifying it so that it's fresh and new. Now, I can do that on paper, in advertising, in a theme park show, in a stadium, whatever it needs to. But boiled down, that's the skill. That's that everything that fuels everything. So with all your slashes, what is it that makes you good at each one of those things, or the things that you like doing the best? You'll do any of it, but what do you want to do? And then, of course, depending on who you're talking to, is you have to be ready to tell them how what you're good at can help them. You may not be able to cover all the slashes at once.
Well, particularly if you have, just the elevator pitch time. So, but knowing that, you can go in for that conversation later with a resume that tells all of those details, boiling it down to a single point or a single unifying topic of here's what I do best.
I'm looking at the question here too. It's like, and those are all organizational, logistical, storytelling skills. So you just need to again, who is it that's talking? That's what you want to communicate, and say that you do all these other things, but the thing that you're best at is X, and here's why you're good at the others. I hope this is helping.
It absolutely is. Camille, I've got a question for you from Emily Lamb, who I know is an engineer. One of the things I love about our industry is we represent so many different types of disciplines. We've got imaginative, creative, engineering, blue sky, and the folks who get down in the trenches and make all of those things come to life. So Emily actually represents the engineering discipline, and she has a question about that resume black hole. Before a human puts their eyes on a resume, how do you get through that? Because if you are just sitting in resumes to some black hole email address box that doesn't get personality, doesn't understand authenticity, how do you translate that? How do you turn that into an opportunity?
Okay. Those black holes are called ATSs, or applicant tracking systems. And there are several of them out there. They started coming into being probably about 10 years ago, but the last 6 or 7 years they've really proliferated, and there are several companies that have applicant tracking systems. And if you're applying to a large company, they are going to use ATSs. And it's really sad because Emily is exactly right. It has to get through that applicant tracking system before a human is going to see it. The only way to get through the ATS so that a human sees it is you have to have on your resume that exact key words and phrases that they are looking for. If you're responding to a posting, if there's a particular job that you're applying to through the applicant tracking system, there is going to be a written job description. And you have to take the time, and it is a boatload of work sometimes because it means you're constantly reworking resumes. But you have to reflect those exact phrases. And if you don't, the computer will never pull your resume and it will not be seen. The only other way around that is to find an individual who works in the company who will physically walk your resume to a hiring manager or a recruiter in their human resources department. Those are really the only 2 ways to get through that, because it is that ATS can totally be a black hole and your resume never be seen.
That last point was the one I was expecting you to go to, because like you said, those applicant tracking systems are very keyword driven, and so you have to find the keywords that it's looking for, or you may never get seen. But knowing how to get past the ATS and get into the hands of the right person is where it's really at, and that's what these networking opportunities are all about. That's what TEA and IAPA can really help you do. Networking is one of the most underrated skills, particularly in an industry as small as this one. As Steve Burkett is so fond of saying, there are only 5 people in this industry. So I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Daniil asked, are there any books or websites that you recommend regarding the industry? That's an open question to any of the 3 of you. Any books that you recommend to learn about our industry?
Mine.
John Hench wrote a great one called Designing Disney, about the philosophy of designing parks. It's really quite good. I have not ever run across a good website that I would say, yes, you should go to that website and learn about this industry, but maybe I haven't seen it yet.
There's another book by, now I can't remember his name, but it's the book about finance and how we make the parks happen. Disney by the Numbers. Can't believe I'm forgetting the name. Anyone else?
I certainly enjoyed Marty Sklar's book. It gives a Dream It, Do It. It certainly gives a good history of where our industry has come from.
That's a good one. That's a very good one.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions we've got for the moment. There are a couple of other ones that I think we've covered off fairly well. So, one other question. How about how important is it to have a personal website?
I think it's if you have a pretty stout resume portfolio that not everything can get on to a iPad. I think it's important because I look at people's resumes online all the time, portfolios online all the time. So I think it is important because, to be honest with you, we get lots of paper, and if you give me a portfolio that's printed on paper, it's going to go into a file somewhere, and it's just not going to be at my fingertips. Where if I'm sitting at my computer, it's easy enough to go and look at it. So I think it's important.
Especially if you're an artist. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or a videographer.
The other thing is if you have a site, and if you have left something behind with Paul or Kyle, you may think you know what Paul or Kyle are looking for, but if they have a site that has a broader range of things and they're able to quickly scroll through that, they may actually find something that interests them that you didn't realize would be of interest to them. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Or they may find something, some little thing that connects the 2 of you, some background that you worked on a Star Wars exhibit, or you did something with some piece of art that's an artist that they absolutely adore, or you have some musical interest in common that just gives you a connection to that person.
It's also a living document. You're adding to your portfolio every day, every week, and you're not necessarily reprinting and resending it out. So it just becomes a living document of where you are in your skills and the breadth of what you're working on. So it's really important there as well. But make sure your online presence is professional, though. Remember, because that's your calling card. So if I go and it looks like a really poorly designed website, that will reflect on me. And your artwork or your designs may be great, but I'm going to be thinking about that website.
Mm-hmm.
I was reminded that there is one particularly fabulous website that you should pay attention to, and that's teaconnect.org. I was nudged to provide that plug, so thank you for reminding me, Joanna. The book that I was talking about, by the way, is called Walt's Revolution by the Numbers, and it's by Buzz Price. And if you don't know the story of how Disney World came to be and how all that land purchase happened and how all the money made that happen, that is an amazing book to read. And Marty Sklar's book also digs into it, so definitely take a look at those. If you search for those on your favorite bookstore site, there will be links to other books by other folks in this industry, so definitely take a look at those as well. So,
and Buzz's Price's son, David, is on the Western board.
Very valid point. Yeah, so you actually might get to meet the man behind some of those numbers. So, Anyway, that's all the time we've got for today. Clara, I know you had a couple words you wanted to say to close us out.
Well, first of all, I was totally neglectful in introducing myself. My name is Clara Rice, and I am the chair of the TEA Next Gen Committee. Our job is to connect you with fantastic folks like your panelists today, and to introduce you to the industry and the opportunities within. So, pardon me for being remiss in telling you who the heck you're talking to. I had a Next Gen asked me for my more kind of practical IAPA pieces of advice the other day, and I just thought I'd close by sharing those with you now. Some of them are kind of tongue-in-cheek, and some of them kind of build on what our panelists have said. Some of them are have come from what I've learned not to do. So, and some of them are things I'm still working on, so myself. So don't be afraid if you can't be perfect at these, because I certainly am not, particularly the first one. IAPA is much akin to a marathon. Pace yourself. Don't stay out too late. Easier said than done with things like the TEA party. Eat regularly. Carry a meal bar. You will forget to eat. You will forget to drink water. So carry something with you, because really it's a slog. I mean, it's a fantastic experience, but it's 10 hours a day for 6 days. This is mostly for the women. Wear comfortable shoes and put Band-Aids in your purse. There are 9 miles of aisles, seriously, at IAPA, 9 miles of aisles. It's hard to make a good impression if your feet are screaming. So no heels, no high heels into the evening, until the evening receptions. Trust me on this one, you'll thank yourself later. Go to as many sessions as you can on as many topics as possible. Even if you don't think retail is your thing or food and beverage, there's always something to learn. So go to a session and learn something new. There's dozens of sessions available on every aspect of the industry. Build your social media presence. We talked about social media earlier. Social media is what I do for a living with JRA and PR. So tweet what you hear and see using the hashtag IAPA14. Blog about your experience if you have a blog. People will notice. People will say, who is that person? They're obviously very engaged. They're obviously very interested in what they're learning. I want to meet that person. We talked about this a little bit. If you want to meet a specific person or company at their booth, do it on Friday. As Paul mentioned, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, people are jam-packed with meetings. It's not that they don't want to talk to you. It's just they got to make the deals. Friday, things tend to drop off. We've noticed that in our booth over the years, particularly Friday afternoon. So that's the time you can go and get that one-on-one time with people in the booth and find out more about what these companies do. We talked about this. Remember to lead with getting to know the other person, not with I want a job. And my one favorite and most frivolous piece of advice is to download the IAPA Expo app. You can use it to find all the free food in the exhibit hall. I pretty much, from pizza to Dippin' Dots to pretzels, they got it all, and it's all free. So download the IAPA app and bon appetit. So that's my advice for a successful IAPA. Joe, you want to add some final thoughts?
I do have at least one final thought. First of all, I also failed at introducing myself, everyone. My name is Joe Fox. I am a project engineer for Berkeley Engineering, and I am the host for these TEA Talks Next Gen Web Series events. So I very much appreciate you all coming. I apologize for the technical difficulties in getting started today. We are working on the scope of our next session, and we will have the announcements and flyers out about that very shortly. So please do continue getting the word out to your friends and the folks at your colleges and help us attend. I will be at IAPA, so I'm looking forward to meeting a great many of you there. If you want someone to help you figure out who to talk to, I will be happy to do any introductions that I can. This is an industry that I am very passionate about, and for those of you who know me, I've only been officially a part of this industry for a very short time, but I can tell you that networking in IAPA and TEA events are the way, the path to finding your happiness. So don't underestimate any of the advice given here today. Thank you to our illustrious speakers. You are all fantastic. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. You were all fantastic. So with that, thank you all for coming today, and we'll talk to you again very soon.